Welcome this evening to everybody here at the Smithsonian American Art Museum and everybody online. Welcome to Archive Live with Joyce J. Scott and Josh Franco. This is a program organized by the Renwick Gallery of the Smithsonian American Art Museum and the wonderful Archives of American Art. I'm Mary Savig. I'm the acting curator in charge of the Renwick Gallery and co-curator of the current exhibition, Subversive Guild Sublime, Fiber Art by Women. That includes two brilliant works by Joyce Scott. Subversive Guild Sublime will be on view through January 5th, 2025. And I'd also like to note that Joyce's work is on view here at SAAM in the exhibition Shape of Power, Stories of Race in American Sculpture. This evening, we acknowledge the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here, the Native people on whose ancestral homelands we are gathered, and the labor of the people who were enslaved in constructing this historic building. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the program. For those joining us online and who are subscribed to our YouTube channel, please use the comment section to ask questions at the end. For those in person, please use the comment card inside your program, and those will be collected at the end. And please silence your phones. Our speakers tonight are two of my favorite people in the entire world, my colleague, Josh T. Franco, and superstar artist, Joyce Scott. As head of collecting at the Archives of American Art, Josh Franco leads the team that identifies, investigates, and acquires personal papers, institutional records, and oral histories that tell the stories of American art. In addition to ensuring their preservation at the Smithsonian, he advises researchers working in the archives, making them aware of materials relevant to their pursuits. Franco also advises early and mid-career artists on planning for the future of their personal papers. Previously, he served as Latino collection specialist at the Archives of American Art. Dr. Joyce J. Scott is a MacArthur Fellow renowned for her figurative sculpture and jewelry using bead weaving techniques, blown glass, and found objects. As an African-American feminist artist, Scott fearlessly tackles challenging themes, including race, misogyny, sexuality, stereotypes, gender inequality, economic disparity, history, politics, rape, and discrimination. Over the past 50 years, Scott has also made a mark as an innovative fiber artist, printmaker, installation artist, vocalist, and performer. Joyce J. Scott earned her BFA degree from the Maryland Institute College of Art and an MFA degree from the Instituto Allende in Mexico. Scott was awarded an honorary fellowship from NYU and honorary doctorates from MICA, California College of the Arts, and Johns Hopkins University. Scott's work is included in many important private, public, and museum collections worldwide. In 2024, she opened her traveling museum 50-year retrospective, co-organized by the Baltimore Museum of Art and Seattle Art Museum. It's currently in Seattle, and it's one of the best exhibitions I've ever seen. Scott and her work have been the subject of many scholarly books and articles. She has received numerous commissions, grants, awards, residencies, and prestigious honors, most notably from the National Endowment of the Arts, Anonymous Was a Woman, National Living Treasure Award, the MacArthur Fellowship, and here, the Smithsonian Visionary Artist Award. Welcome, Josh and Joyce.
I'm very humble now.
I'm a doctor too, Mary, if you forgot. Hi, Joyce. Thank you, everyone, for coming in person here in front of us and also online. Joyce gave me a cough drop before we started. It's still in there. I'm so happy to be here with Joyce. And I'm going to run through a little bit of context about the archives, because I think you're probably most accustomed to seeing Joyce and her artworks, which are amazing. As Mary said, they're on view in this building. But I always like to set the context in what we mean by papers at the Archives of American Art. So get artworks out of your brain. That's not what we're here to talk about tonight. But it is all about Joyce. It's still all about you, Joyce. So last summer, to pick up the second edition to the Joyce J. Scott papers.
That's my house.
That's your house. That's me in shorts. Some colleagues and I went to Joyce's home. It was nice because it's Baltimore, so we could rent a truck and go do it ourselves as a small team. So we spent the afternoon with Joyce. Joyce identified where there were caches of things we should look through. We figured out what's appropriate for the archives, which boils down to research value. So when we think about papers and what should be in the archives, just think of yourself holding a piece of paper or looking at a video or reading an email. We do collect digital things. And we ask ourselves, could this possibly help a researcher in the future answer a question about Joyce, about Baltimore, about American art, all kinds of topics. So it's a kind of a guessing game, but we get pretty good at it over the years, and it's always great when we can do it with the donor themselves, because they can definitely inform the process.
I need that picture. It's a beautiful
I'll
picture.
send it to you. And then things come to the archives. This is our loading dock, just a couple blocks away. This is my colleagues, our oral historian, our registrar, and a curatorial assistant and archivist helping to unload. Joyce, this is what we did when we left your house. And this is where papers live. So this is just a small portion of Joyce's
my
papers.
stuff?
Yeah, this is your stuff. We can go see it in person if you want. They're well-loved, well-used books. Joyce's papers do get requested pretty frequently, which we're very happy to serve them. So this is where they live in the archive. So
Wow.
This is how. And they've been processed by our archivists. There's a finding aid online, so they're very easy to orient yourself to. And then finally, for my intro, we also collect oral histories. We have the largest collection of papers and oral histories related to arts in the United States in our collection. Joyce also sat for an oral history with the archives, and I want to play a little bit of that now to set the ground. If you want to talk to yourself, Joyce, go ahead.
Well, let them know that's my mom.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
It's a
my
beautiful-
mother, Elizabeth.
Well, my mother told me that she was considered a bit different as a quilt maker because she didn't like to stick to the old-fashioned designs. And when everybody did crazy quilts, her quilts were always just a little crazier than everyone else's. And that kind of improvisational skill, that kind of real kind of dense storytelling all wrapped up in love and all of the other things that happen when you are a child living under this kind of gross pressure of the South, being a have-not, and the racism. I mean, I really think about the kind of work that she makes and how glorious it is when I think about her youth, where you were afraid to, you don't have running water, and if you don't have a well that's super close, you're afraid to go get the elixir of life water. You're picking cotton and you're being bitten by the very things, but you can't not pick cotton because that's how your family has livelihood to live. We don't know this. We don't really know this. But that informed then the house that we lived in. You know, my father picked tobacco. He came from, I think, 8 kids maybe. My mother's darker skin, my father's lighter skin. His travails here were at Bethlehem Steel. I didn't hear this until maybe 2 years before my godfather, who also worked at Bethlehem Steel, who was darker skinned, told me this story. Wale, who was my godfather, who was a Pentecostal preacher, I did street ministry with he and his wife, who's my godmother, Liz. So it's Wyatt Brown and Lucille Brown. I'm on the street playing the tambourine with them while we're doing street ministry. I told them I was sure that they were responsible for a few of my emotional problems later in my life. But until he passed away, he would drive me to the airport because I was traveling around the United States speaking and teaching. And he told me this story driving. And remember, this all goes back to everything. I talk in circles. He said, you know, you're a white girl. And I said, wait a second, back up. What do you mean? He said, well, people are not appreciated, but they're designated by their skin color. And your having education makes you a certain kind of person in our culture. I said, well, but, you know, I understand what you're saying, but I'm still that little Joyce. He said, yes, you are. And then he started telling me a story about what he meant.
So Joyce, I brought the journal. Now we get to the Archive Live part of the show. So Archive Live is all about giving the audience the experience that we collectors get to have in the field. So I brought some stuff, and we're going to start with this journal. I'll do a little flip through while I pull it out.
Boy, did I forget about that.
So Joyce, I just want to hand you this journal. Maybe tell us about the cover a little bit first. And then if you want to open to a page and see what's there.
This is what my resume looked like. So I'd have my photo on one side, and I was very young, so I had a one-page resume. And I also used it for stationery, and I had small cards made. At the time, not only was I making visual art, but I think this is also at a time when I was writing for local arts. This is so wild for me. And so it also has something in Spanish, which means I bought this or pilfered this in San Miguel Allende when I was in graduate school down there. And I actually wrote stuff. Oh my gosh. Things like that like pop up from your past that show that you had not only a will and a desire, but you made a way for yourself to see your future through the primary acts that you did as a younger person. And the fact that I would write down thoughts meant that I was giving myself something to peruse, and something to strive for and to become. And to think that your thoughts are worthy. If you talk to me for a period of time, you might dispute that. But, just to think that this thought might be worthy, I might be able to use it. Also, if you come up, like I'm an idea guy, if you come up with 7,000 ideas in a day, you should write down at least 2,000 of them,
Yeah.
But this is very interesting to me also. I was very good looking. When I look at my face, I see my parents. I am a real combination of them. So the history of having their love with me every day was the whole thing. And also my handwriting was incredibly legible.
It's very legible,
It's not
yeah.
now, or you can't even read it now.
And this is the late 1970s. I saw
Yes.
1977 somewhere.
So I left Mexico in 70, and I immediately did more residencies around the country.
May I read something?
Absolutely.
You agreed to be surprised. We did
Yeah.
offer you the option.
Hope it's
Joyce.
not dirty.
This has to do with travel too, I think. My God, my true God, I am in Africa. Spelt with a K, which is interesting, I think intentional. This land, the real land, today, I danced with people who needed to feel my warmth, my warmth. Today, someone is wearing braids and gold and colored patterns, colored with a U. Interesting, too. Too many to mention, danced with me and sang and walked. And then something's very luminous. So what was
Okay.
Africa about?
And you probably, because I was in a francophone country.
Oh, yeah.
When I was in graduate school in Mexico, I met a woman named Nora Ben, a Jewish woman from New York, always with a cigarette like that, and we became not only fast friends, but sisters. And I'd visit her family in Florida, and she'd visit my mom and I in Baltimore, and she'd even come. We'd travel once a year. And we went to Africa together, and on that trip, we went to Senegal, Mali, Gambia, and Morocco. A story about dancing with people. I made up my mind that I wanted a watermelon. Now, that trope, you can see the stereotypes multiplied in that one. So we went to a local market, and I didn't know how to say it, so I just said aguamelon or something, and and then I found it. And I found it after a lot of perusing, and I didn't find it now that I remember. A woman found it, and she was like this. And she put it down and said the only way I could get it was to dance for it.
Oh. Stereotypes on stereotypes.
Twirling and everything. And then we were dancing together. And the people were around us. And I picked up the watermelon and danced out of the place.
Nice.
Africa was a place where I was always myself. Some places you're afraid to be too much of yourself because it's just too much. But there it was being able to touch people who were very much like my relatives and who had a similar sense of humor. It was also my going, in the 1970s, you had to find your roots. And I went off. And let me say, Nora was there. And when she saw what was happening, she left because she didn't feel that this was her experience to have.
Who's Nora again?
Nora was my friend that I met in graduate school. Life is very funny because we would meet. I traveled a lot teaching and performing. And as we got older and you're not going out of the country so much, so I'd say, look, I'm working in the city, can you get there? And so she lived in Florida and I was getting a job in Florida. And I finally got the exact date. And I said, Nora, you gotta meet me. She said, I can't make it. I said, why? She said, I'm dying. Well, that was her sense of humor. But she was dying. And I couldn't get to her in enough time. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You wrote this line that's prescient. It's universal. It's almost impossible to know the future. You told yourself that back in the 70s.
But I was running for it.
Yeah.
If there's anything that I would pass on to anyone, it is that keep running. Even if you don't know what your goal is, if you don't have a goal, just keep running. Because other people understand what life is. I do not. So I'm just going to keep running and see what there's an old gospel song, keep on running, see what the end's going to be. And that's what I'm doing.
Running.
Yeah.
So we're staying in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's pretty chronological, actually. Not normally how I do things, but. So I'll give you these. So these are a document and photographs from your participation in the Maryland Arts Council Artists in Education program. And the project was called Coil Wall Hanging. Do you recall this?
Yes, this image or an image like it is that in my show at the Baltimore Museum of Art and at the Seattle Art Museum. So I and my mother, for a while, would be artists in residence in recreation centers and in schools. My mother and I were the bad cop and the good cop. Sometimes teachers would send their discipline problems to the visiting artist. And I was always the person who was like, okay, now we're going to do this stitch. We're going to do this stitch. And my mom was always, come on over here, baby. I'll show you how to do this stitch. They also made a giant loom for me that I would schlep around to different schools, in the park, to different malls, doing this kind of participatory weaving. I was very young, it's my 20s, and some of the folks had a little problem believing that they should show me respect until I whipped out those stitches, blacka ding, bing, bang. Also, sometimes I'd be dressed in garments that I brought from another country. In fact, when I would go to schools, I would wear these international clothing, especially with young kids in elementary school. So they'd ask me things, and then I could start talking about the garments where I'd been and what these stitches meant and how I would spin my own yarn and everything. And this image is of me weaving in the park. Baltimore has a park called Jewett Hill Park, and it's in the real middle of the town. It's not far from where I live. It's vast. In fact, supposedly it was a plantation at one point. And I used to set up this really large loom that's based on, maybe think of a Native American loom that's just a frame loom without a floor and all of the treadles and everything. And people would come by and weave with me. I got smart and I put it next to the road so I wouldn't be so deep into the park where I'd get bad behavior from people. And it was amazing because the birds would talk to me. You know, I could hear the animals in the zoo talking to me, and I was not drinking. I always liked the outreach with humans wherever I could find them. I didn't feel that my relationship with folks would have to be, or my artwork would have to be in an institution, although, trust me, I'm not putting down museums or art galleries. But I knew, especially for young black people, probably the place that I would get them is where they would traverse a lot. So schools or parks. I did street stuff, you know.
So teaching and making are always together for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last piece that I worked on, that Amy, my gallerist, put at the Armory Show was an 11 by 8 foot beaded piece, and I had 3 of my friend artist mentees working with me. And when I say they kept learning how to do this kind of beadwork and weaving together, and then they would bring in their artwork so we would talk about it. So it really wasn't just me employing them to do something. It was us working together and seeing what their artwork could yield from this as well.
Yeah. And do you know what you would have been making in this picture?
Wall hanging.
Wall
We made
hangings, yeah.
all kinds of wall hangings throughout the cities. Most don't exist anymore. Either when they painted the building, they put it in the closet and threw it away, or somebody stole it and took it home.
Yeah.
Or both.
Or both. I mean, I also love this sweater, this very clearly woven, beautiful
Yes.
vest he's wearing.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I don't know where I point this. There we go. I want to talk about fashion, because there's a lot of fashion. You are very fashionable.
Thank you, Donna.
But but it's just amazing how much fashion shows up in the papers. I think that's something that's really striking.
Well, I've sort of forgotten about these.
Yeah, well, here you go. You can flip through
Completely.
these. So this is a classic Middlesex notebook, cardboard. A lot of funny, I don't know if you can interpret these things on the cover. Yeah, I don't.
Because sometimes, you know, I doodle with a purpose. I purposely doodle, so I give away a lot of drawings that I do, and so who knows what the heck I was writing. And is this also from the 70s?
I don't know if there's a date anywhere on it.
I say that because
Could be.
I think it must be because my handwriting is so legible. And my drawings don't look very different than what you see now. So I do, for this show in Baltimore and Seattle, I made sure everyone in each museum received a drawing. And so that's like 500 little drawings. And now I look at them and they're very much like this, but they were all portraits.
I'll take the folder.
Thank you, love. When I knew my love formed a circle around you, the joy of my affection coming running through. Didn't do much searching, you came to me in joy, and I'll sing of your love. So I did write and do write songs. Much
know-
more successful than
I
what
know
I
the
just
audience
read.
wants singing if you want to sing anything.
I will sing a song that I wrote a little later.
Okay.
And see, here are the fashion things. It's so wild to look at because a lot of my work is improvisational, like the garment, I'll just start working on a fabric by stitching it together, or I would crochet a lot. And there's a lot of crochet garments as
Yeah.
well.
But this is why we love notebooks at the archives. They show you things about papers in general. They show you things about the artist that they're not the most known for. So I remember another artist's papers discovering she had designed golf courses, and she's a painter, but she did that for a while. But here I'm just looking at, you're an incredible draftsperson. Look at
I
this.
could draw. That's my mother and I.
Okay, so there's this beautiful pencil drawing, two faces. Maybe, yeah, if you're here, you could see it. But that's your mother and you there?
Yep. That's my mother went, oh my gosh, when she was very, very young. My mother wanted to have children, and she'd had miscarriages, and I'm the one that made it. So she had me when she was 33, and in the 60s, in the 40s, I was born in 1948, that's kind of late. And she always told me she wanted someone who she could love and who would love her unconditionally. And that was our life together. And I see it in these pictures too. That is a very good drawing.
It's a really nice
Just
drawing.
tear that out and take it back.
It's too late, Joyce. You gave it.
Too bloody late. This from the man who came to my house in shorts.
I think we have to find one more page in this. Did you ever think about fashion school? So I'm just looking at, we have other fashion illustrations in the archives we come across a lot, but this is like, you're clearly thinking from one figure to the other, like a dress getting more complex.
Well, we did fashion shows.
Yeah.
And the fashion shows were not, see,
The style,
under
the hair, that's very 70s, the
Yes.
faces and the hair, yeah.
and the shoes. Our fashion shows were performances, of that period. It was also important for me, even though my fashion shows were ethnically mixed, for it to have the oomph of Sly and the Family Stone or someone. So there was a kind of always a African or a black undertow in what I did, or overtow. And although these ladies are thinner, I always mix it up with thick girls. And I was sure I was just incredibly fat. And I look at my pictures from that period, and I really wasn't. And it shows what that kind of image making will do for you.
Yeah.
To you.
You can make more jokes about me while I look for papers, Joyce, if you want.
Well, what the heck are you doing anyway? I love looking at you.
We're hanging out.
And that's the Thunder Thigh Review.
That's the Thunder Thigh Review. So I brought this pamphlet that's like in very great shape, actually. And there's a lot of text on this. I don't know, I'll let you read some of this. Of the program, there's a great description on the back.
Yeah, it's okay. In the 80s, a friend of mine, Alma Roberts, who was a poetess, said, my niece would really love to meet you because she's a performer and we have like senses of humor. And I met Kayla Wall, and that was that. So we traveled all around the United States. We were at the Fringe Festival in Scotland, the Stage Door Festival in Holland. We were at a Jamaican or a Caribbean festival in Canada, plying our trade as storytellers and as artists. This was a seminal, and I mean that in the best possible way, experience for me because it allowed me to say exactly what I was thinking. When you make artwork and it hangs on the wall or it's on a pedestal, then you're presenting an idea to someone, and it's up to them to make their decision about it. Well, the same thing happens to you when you're performing, except you're telling them stuff. And that doesn't always leave a lot of room for them to get it wrong. Do you want me to read some of
Sure,
this?
yeah, that's great.
Women of Substance, that was the name of our first show, I believe. It's a hilarious show, created and performed by Joyce J. Scott and Kayla Wall, who are the Thunder Thigh Review. Women of Substance is about food, sex, and obsession. It is a warm, wacky, riotously funny piece of theater featuring a talking refrigerator, the goddess Venus, and telephone sex. Women of Substance is potent, get the double entendre, not only because of the subjects covered, but the larger issues revealed. I wrote that now. They are women to be reckoned with, women of enormous charms, invention, affection, and need. Now, that was by the Baltimore City paper, which doesn't exist anymore. Both Joyce J. Scott and Kayla Wall are established artists, performers, and educators in their own right. Joyce is a successful multimedia artist and has exhibited her jewelry and sculpture widely in the United States and abroad. She has worked as a singer in Mexico and in New York. Kayla Wall is an actress, stand-up comedian, writer, and director who has performed internationally. She is an educator working with teenagers, children of substance abusers, and recovering addicts, using theater in a variety of programs throughout America. You know, one of the things about that that's very important is Kay worked with children of substance abuse and all of that because she was a substance abuser. And so we worked out, and she worked out a lot of how to get out of her fix. It was very therapeutic for her, being on the stage, and being a partner to that showed me a lot. In fact, one of the things that brought us together was when I came home in 1970 from graduate school, I got a job as a drug counselor with art as my modality. 'Cause I've never been a drug abuser, so I had no respect whatsoever from people. But when we made, little plays and we made murals on all the walls and it was all wonderful, that gave me some real insights into what would happen with us as partners in performance. And I left that after maybe 2 years, not only because they were introducing, what's the drug that they give people? It just ran out of my head as a substitute for methadone, and the junkies were just beside themselves because they had a new drug to play with and sell. And I was like, oh no. So I left it because of that, and because you meet people in the best and the worst personas. And that gave us a lot of fodder for Women of Substance and the Thunder Thigh Review, because Kay was clearing herself of stuff, and we were able to work about a cacophony of beautiful things and horrible things that happen to yourself internally. And it's because we knew exactly what was happening, not because we were kind of making up and figuring out. We knew what was happening. And there was a giant talking refrigerator that we dragged on a train in England to Scotland because our producer was too bloody cheap to pay for it. The giant one, and I would be in the freezer part, beckoning Kay with food. It was just wonderful, darling.
I went to Fringe Festival on accident, and I'll tell you that story later. But,
okay.
What were audience reactions like to the Thunder Thigh review?
They loved this. Firstly, we were very good. I say that
Of course,
without
yeah.
a lot of ego. I know that's hard to believe, but I say that without a lot of ego because we actually worked very hard on it. We got our first director at a summer program in Baltimore at Maryland Art Place, and they would bring directors in from around the country to work with groups. And we were a partnership who was chosen. We did maybe 2 or 3 times. And each time we had a director who really treated what we did as a theater performance. And so they liked us because we were really good. Also, got to remember this is a time where the civil rights movement and different ethnic groups intermingling beyond, marching, but everyday things in life and looking for equality and friendship was happening. So that was good. I'll extend this story by saying that we also did, I think it was called the Stage Door Festival. And it was a festival in Amsterdam, although we did a little tour of Rotterdam and Arnhem. And it was Christmas time. And on the billboards, there are lots of people in blackface because
Zwarte
that
Piet.
represented
Yes.
Zwarte Piet. And
Yeah.
we're like, of course, we don't know from Zwarte Piet.
It's a
So we're like
nightmare.
standing there like, these are people in blackface.
Yeah.
And then there are little kids running around in blackface. So, of course, our knowledge is of slavery and of coon shows. Okay. So we're standing on the dock, and in comes a boat with Santa Claus, who's Santa Claus,
So-
and
and-
Zwarte Piet.
Yeah.
Zwarte Piet is his little minion, and he has a big bag, and if you're really horrible, then he'll throw you in the bag. He's like the villain. So we're like, explain the Zwarte Piet thing and the Santa Claus to us, and they see right away that we're not that happy about it. And then we were also reading that people who lived in Amsterdam who were of color, black, they were not happy because they're saying, you may think this is fun, but this is not fun for us. So they started trying to explain to us that this was, Zwarte Piet is not an African. He's a chimney sweep. I'm like, so he never washed his face. I don't get what you're saying. He's a chimney sweep. Okay. We do a performance in a museum, and then I go into the museum proper where I could see the exhibition. And right in front of me, there is a comic book page or the funnies from a newspaper, I can't remember which, of Zwarte Piet cooking a white Dutchman in a big cauldron.
Yeah.
And it's a Zwarte Piet. So that, of course, informed our performance there as well.
Yeah. Zwarte Piet is hard to wrap your head around. I remember my first encounter.
It really wasn't
Yeah.
hard. For me, it wasn't. It's just because, this country was colonized by people from Europe. So it was, though, in the 80s. So then one has to remember that just because we're marching for civil rights and doing other things here and yelling Black Power, that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the world equates
Yeah.
equality or civil rights in the same way.
Yeah.
And they just thought it was nostalgic.
Yeah.
And so we were saying, you mean like lynching?
Yeah. We won't. Zwarte Piet is a whole rabbit hole if you want to go down. It's pretty
You should-
fascinating and still ongoing.
You really
Yeah.
should, it's one of those things where where you're really working to have equality and that for others, and you realize that other parts of the world are so entrenched in what their history is, as well as Holland is the size of one of our states, right? And they have basically a homogeneous population, even though they have people from all over the world. They come to Holland to have a Holland experience. They don't have the same, they didn't, I won't speak about now. They didn't have the same desire about civil rights or whatever, then, or the same, I shouldn't say desire, the same method of dealing with it. But here it was like marching and yelling about slavery and the whole thing, and they're like, not so much.
Yeah.
We just like the blackface thing.
Yeah. And you've always performed in this sort of global, it seems like that's notable that you've gone kind of worldwide for a long time.
Never stop.
Never stop. Yeah.
Look, when I talk to you, and poor Amy, my gallerist, has heard this so many times. She's like this. To be who I am, and to have come from people who were literally sharecroppers. My father picked tobacco, my mother picked cotton. They went to one-room schoolhouses. My mother was born in 1916, which means her parents were born in the 1800s. They swaddled and created her, and she created me. I have the direct knowledge of her. She knew her grandfather, who was an ex-slave, and he was someone who taught metalsmithing, blacksmithing, and sweetgrass weaving and caning chairs. That's where she got it and gave that to me. Okay? So for her and my father to see someone who loved school and education and reading and had the ability to go to school and have it, because they came up south, not coming up south to think freedom. They knew they'd have a scintilla, a smidge, just that bit more freedom to choose where they might be able to work and how they worked to create a life for their children. They met there in Baltimore. And so when I was born, they could give me something that they didn't even dream about having. Well, I shouldn't say that, because people dream. But they didn't believe that it would come to fruition. And then there I was, little Joyce, an artist in utero. I came out of my mom. I said to the doctor, move, you're in my light. But boom, boom. I went back twice because I didn't like the first two takes. Ba-ba-bing. Okay, you're old enough to laugh at that. These young ladies are like, what? That's not Richard Pryor. Yeah, it is, but that's a whole other story. Yes, Milo.
So now, where's my clicker? We're going into, so the next document.
That sounded dirty. Where's my clicker? It's not that kind of talk, babe. Or is it?
So this document's from the new edition, so it hasn't been processed yet. So just FYI, it has a paperclip now, but this will go away. Paperclips are bad for papers, pro tip.
Yeah.
But I'll let the archivist deal with that. So I brought this document this is one of those when it's so great that you're here to sort of give some explanation. I think it's storyboard, right?
It's a storyboard for a performance. And so what you see are like scene to scene, hopefully doing this so the lighting person might have, there's the lighting cues and everything. When I was talking about it, you could, performance was so important because I could say exactly what I wanted to say. It also was because it consolidated my thoughts and made me a better, in quotes, I'm laughing at this word, scholar, because I had to research stuff, and we literally put together a show. And remember, Kay is a director as well as an actress. I learned with her and through this experience how to build a performance, which is also very much like building a chapter or when you're writing something or building a song. I learned how to modularly put together a stage, which is also like putting together a drawing or a painting or levels of jewelry. It was a maturing process. And so I look at this and like real lighting cues, and starting with her, then when I did one-person performances, I would know how to come in, and then sometimes I'd be in a university that had a really kind of schlocky. I'm loving the Yiddish I'm pulling out tonight. I haven't said schlocky in a long time. Little theater, or it would be students running the show. So I would be able to give this to them and we could work with them. And I had authority and I understood what I was doing, which meant I matured as a person and as an artist. I didn't look back and I kept moving. And it's very important to keep moving if you want to be who you really believe you can be. I wasn't lulling around. Now, I'm sure I missed stuff because I was moving so fast. And I'm sure I didn't appreciate everything as I should have because I was in the middle of it. But I've had quite a rich life because of it. And that came from people who were, who had great lights and beauty, but didn't have academic educations or much money.
Yeah. And I had a question about this too. There's a note on the back. I'm curious who Nellie is. Nellie, can you learn the monologue? Reading everything else from cards. Dorothy's, Carolyn's, or maybe you can memorize only the center of the monologue, beginning like you're reading a story, then something from memory. Do you know who Nellie is?
Well, that, of course, is a long time ago. But Nellie might have been someone that we pulled into the performance. I think that was maybe let me. It looks like more than one person.
You're working with
I know
Carolyn,
exactly
Nellie,
what this
Dorothy.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a Statue of Liberty there. Remember when there was this is for people our age, because when the first overflow of immigrants came in and they called them boat people. Well, we did a whole performance of boat people. You see Statue of Liberty, and I was in a box as my boat, and so sometimes we would employ people to narrate for us. And I loosely say employ. Sometimes we'd ask people, will you read this, please, as a bit? And that probably is what this was, somebody who was doing something while they were changing the lights. We also had tape things, so for all I know, that might have also been something that was taped and inserted.
Yeah. But this is, especially for performance, this is the value of archives, because those are ephemeral things. Although I'll note that in your papers, we have a lot of audio-visual, a lot of VHS and cassettes, so we're lucky we do have documentation.
But I tell you,
Probably not
I
from
had
this one.
great costumes, and they said, we don't take fabric. So that size, like 200 pair of drawers that I had for me, they wouldn't take those, which I think are very important for the whatever. Because I performed in, they were like an entire garment.
Yeah.
I performed in them.
Just because it's not in our scope doesn't mean it's not important.
My underwear aren't in your scope?
They're not in our scope. You
What
know,
kind of joint is this?
There is an old pair from a long time ago, a pair of rubber underwear that.
They're not mine, guys.
No. Clifford still sent them to a critic who wrote a bad review of him.
Pair of rubber
So we
underwear.
did take Clifford Still's rubber underwear. Sorry.
Is that why it was still? Or? Yeah, I'm sorry.
So I want to get into as we get towards. Oh, it's question time. It's Q&A time. We're okay. So we just have a couple more things. I just want to get into a more recent context and also bigger context. So this is also just a nod to our archivists and their work. So these are the labels they devised as they were processing your papers. So this one's postcards, art, and Black artists. So I just want to open this up as a chance to talk about Emma Amos, but also the larger kind of Black arts community you're so, such a central part of. Emma Amos was interviewed by Bell Hooks for this. I'm sorry, I'm not Bell Hooks.
Yeah,
Can't
she
help
just
it, no.
passed.
Oh,
I
did she?
think last year, maybe this year or last
Yeah.
year. I would go to New York, everybody goes to New York. And my mentor was there also, Arch Smith. And I'd go around and see people, and she was older than I. And she just was a very, very good person who would talk to me about painting, and her daughter was my age, I think, and was either a writer in some way involved in, I think, the literary part of the art. And she would talk to me about the kind of work she did. I think that her husband was white, so we got to talk about that. She was really pretty amazing as a person, very giving. And that was, my time in New York was doing performance and showing at smaller places and doing installation work, but it was also meeting lots of artists, and it was not the New York that exists now. It really was just artists on the street, and you could meet folks and gather in small galleries and
can
just
know
go to
everybody.
museums,
Yeah.
just live in museums.
Very lucky I get to talk to a lot of folks from that generation, and that's the one line they all, you could know everybody. That's what they miss the most.
You could be in people's studios saying, "Ooh, a fire trap. Ooh, but it sure is cute, but I'm getting out of here. This place is going up in flames." Because people actually had those spaces.
Yeah.
They could commandeer spaces and pay very little rent and live there and have, you were really in a art-soddened environment. And that for someone coming from Baltimore, we're very filthy with artists in Baltimore, but we really are up south. We're not New York. And so it's a different way of doing things with art. I have to say that people come and live in Baltimore still because you can afford to, and because it's so filthy with artists, that there's that community of artists, like New York used to be.
Yeah.
In fact, someone said to me that she felt it was like being in New York in the 50s and 60s in Baltimore. Now I'm like, the 50s, really? That's segregation. I'm not exactly sure you mean that, but okay. Yeah. And she meant the camaraderie and the community and accessibility. And we have lots and lots of institutions that are arts institutions or institutions that have an art segment in it. So, there might be there are lots and lots of universities that have galleries, whether they have super wonderful art departments or not. Or a hospital might have something that they'll show. Yeah, and Johns Hopkins is there, so they have lots of stuff, and they bought art, and they have art all around. In fact, there's a little walkway bridge from one part of the old, I think, building in Johns Hopkins in the Onecology Center, and there's a big quilt that I made that's my mother, my father's mother, and mine all mixed, and people tell me, they say, they're going to the cancer thing, and they say they see it as they walk in, and it makes a real difference for them.
That's nice.
And so the different institutions in Baltimore do collect and have art. So it's that kind of art environment that's really good.
It's beautiful. So last document, correspondence is probably what we have the most of in the archive, so I had to have
Do you
some.
really?
I don't know, Elizabeth.
But I mean, for me?
Not from you.
Oh,
I don't
I
know.
didn't think-
You have a lot of correspondence,
I
just
do.
in general. It's a big part of our collection. So this is just a sweet card from American Craft Council,
Yeah.
congratulating you on a cover feature, and I just wanted to give it as a chance to think about the craft world that you've really been a part of building in your career too.
Well, congratulations on your cover article. And it says Craft Horizons, which I don't think exists anymore. I was someone, thank you, and part of the blessing in traveling the world is that you see that crafts are not segregated or minimized by folks, because art for them is art. They live art every day, and they dress artily, and they make what they drink from. So not only is it functional, but it also has beauty with it. So I never separated the two, crafts and fine art. I always thought they were the same. I know from what I do is the same impulse to make both of them. And I believe that and it's been said by many folks that the crafts part is the stepchild, and it's considered to be the crafty, hokey part that people do, and so they should be paid less, and many times it's people of color and women. So you just should be, and it's utilitarian. You're paid left. Painting and sculpture is the real things that is good. Well, I don't believe that. I don't think painting a cup is any better than making the cup.
Yeah.
I don't believe that you can marginalize me. Another thing my mother taught me is I shall not be denied. That's why I keep walking and moving and making, because I can say people actually died. Those people who made those baskets died for me to be here. So I'm just going to keep moving and making. And if you say those things to me, I am articulate enough to tell you why you're wrong. And I also cuss a lot and cuss you out,
Well,
which I
maybe-
should have done when I saw those shorts.
Well, don't cuss at our audience, because we have some Q&As.
You said Q&A, that sounds dirty too, Q&A.
And I think the online cards can come up, yeah.
Yes, I think someone's coming with a mic for you.
Or card.
He has to, couldn't he just yell it?
I mean, we're a small group.
Well, we need to have it repeated via the microphone. So
Okay, go ahead and I'll repeat in the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we could go to, can you hear me?
No, now we can. Speak louder.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone.
Come over here. Yeah.
So going back to the resume where you had your picture, it's a great picture. Your eyes are very prominent in that picture. Why did you select that picture, if you remember? What does it tell you today about what you were then like?
So the question
Is
is,
it this one?
yeah, so the question is, why, Joyce, did you select this picture, which here we're looking at on your journal, but you noted as what you used on your resume? And it's an interesting prompt to look yourself in the eye, also, this question.
Well, firstly, I was fairly gorgeous, so that's one reason I did it. It was a straight-on real picture of me. When you looked at me, that's what I looked like, and I wanted people to see the real me in that image. It's the way I take pictures still, although I like three-quarter better because this eye has ptosis and it looks like this when I take a picture. Anyway, I just am very proud of what I've done in my life, and that's not false. That's not hubris or even false modesty. I worked really hard, and I think it's very important for an African-American woman who has some bona fides and made some success to be in the mix. But I don't mean just in the mix, but sometimes in the front of the mix. Because unfortunately, we're in a time where we just did not have this president elected, whether you feel about her or not. The fact that she was running for president is a real thing. And in a culture where people can be, horrible things can be said to you because of your race or gender, I defy that and place myself right in the middle. Thank you. Someone else has something to say?
we do need folks to do the comment cards. It makes it easier because we are live
Yeah.
streaming, so
Yeah.
we can read them to folks.
Do you know who took this picture, Joyce?
No,
Okay.
that really is the 70s.
Yeah.
I have problems with last week. What did I mean do? It's 50 years ago. Yes, someone else wanted to read something or say something.
Right, is a card. Oh.
We have some coming.
They're cooking.
Great, they're cooking. Do you want to sing right now, Joyce? Is this the time for singing?
Would you like me to sing something?
I would love that, yeah.
I'm going to sing a song that I wrote.
And the cards will come
little
while you
ditty.
sing. Yeah.
I had another performance partner named Lorraine Whittlesey. We did music, original music, and show tunes. And our stage name was Ebony and Irony. She's a white woman, so you got to choose whoever you thought was with her. And we did a play at the Walters Art Museum about African Americans who went to Russia, I think in the 30s, maybe up to 50s, who were embracing communism, and they thought, well, I'll go to, Russia and have a real life, and if I pick something there, it'll be because it's mine, not because I'm impelled to do it in America. And a lot of scholars and, black performance went there too, came home. Well, this song, Breathe, is about someone, a woman who went and realized that no matter where she was, she'd be herself. She'd be that woman, that black woman, and that she didn't have to search for it away from home. She could go back home because she learned a lot. Now, my voice, I didn't warm my voice up, so you might get some squeaks. Just think of it as jazz or blues. I'm not sure I ever really breathed before. Lungs just filled with it, air just full of it. It can't be much different than it was before. Air's just air. I'm still me. Before I didn't believe in life. Truly believe I'd ever have a life worth living. And now I have faith to treasure. One subsistence, a longing, an existence. Inhale, exhale. And now I believe in life, defend, and agree with life. I'm starting to breathe. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. All right, questions.
That's a lot of writing.
I know, very good, nice handwriting, though. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for sharing so freely tonight. I read that you learned with Sandy Fife Wilson at the Haystack Mountain School in the label about your work in the Renwick currently. Could you speak a little more about your experience during that session and at that school at Haystack?
It's 1960. It was 1974.
Don't ask me, Joyce.
It was, because it was 64. I was still in college. So Haystack Mountain School of Crafts, which still exists, used to do ethnic sessions. And by that, they would bring people in from around the world, different parts of the world, to teach. Well, I think his name was, I can't remember. Leach is not, it might be his last name, although I think I'm talking about a potter. He and his wife decided to do two different sessions, one with African American teachers and one with African teachers. And they brought a group of young African American artists to be in this setting. And I think the African American artists were only black artists at the African American session, and then it was mixed for the African session. It was pretty amazing. I met people who have remained friends forever. The African American session is where I met Art Smith. Now, he was a jewelry artist and a metal artist of acclaim, when he saw me working in the studio, he said, "I don't know what you're doing. Don't stop." Because I was mixing all kinds of materials, and I was soldering metals together, and I have a penchant for watching things just melt. Like, look at that. They said, "Joyce, you're not supposed to melt it. You're supposed, oh, but look at that metal." Okay. So I'd make things, and this was the 70s, and I was like a hippie, so I probably had branches in it and dried flower, some bullshit like that. And so he and I became friends, and not only were we friends, but we were mentors, because he helped to tell me the importance of structure and quality in the artwork, and that, those little twigs are going to die, so you could cast them in metal. He opened up that part of it for me. And then I had camaraderie with these other African-American students en masse, and I'm not remembering having that kind of fellowship. Lots of good teachers. Then the next session was Twin 77. He was a printmaker and a painter and a performer, and his wife, she taught me traditional Ashoke weaving, which is lots of warp threads close to each other. After that, I swore never to weave again. But I learned a lot about Africa and all of that kind of wonderful back knowledge. I don't think I'd been to Africa yet. Sandy Fife Wilson, who I talked to not too long ago, I just sent her an email actually yesterday of some of my beadwork, was there during the bicentennial year, which was 1976. And this was before a kill and Lynch Columbus was out. So it was it was all Native American teachers, but the students could be from anywhere. Sandy said she was going to teach something else, but when she got there with the students, we either knew it or it was being taught by someone else, so she decided to do beadwork. I'd done beadwork, of course. My mother taught me beads at maybe 5, but my mother's work was all embroidery. And then I did the ubiquitous Native American Indian loom where you would make little things at camp. But she taught me to combine my mother's passport, which is needle and thread, with a bead, only without having to have any accoutrement. No looms, no fabric to sew into, just the needle, the thread, the bead, and your chutzpah. Whatever your thing was, whatever you could drag, pull, initiate, whatever comes out of your brain, you could do that with a needle, a bead, and a thread. It could be flat, it could be dimensional. And that started, for me, my anointment into the kind of beadwork that I did today. So when she was one of the people who wrote for my catalog for this Walk a Mile in My Dreams show. And when we were talking, she said, I never knew you were going to do anything like this. Meaning she didn't see the idea that beadwork could be just so phantasmagorical and not locked in, this is what I think she meant, an ethnic way of doing something. If you've seen my work, you see that I am not locked in the boundaries of what traditional Yoruba work looks like, or Zulu work. I'm just out there kicking butt.
Yeah.
And that's important for me, or all of my work will refer to somebody else's work another time, and it won't be me, that kind of person who's just so hungry for the nourishment that art gives me that I'm just eating. I'm just making and eating and creating and cooking.
Yeah. This is a good question because we didn't talk about this whole medium. I did not know you're a glass artist. What attracted you to glass blowing? How do you find that glass art relates particularly to the Black experience?
Okay.
Got complicated.
Who
at the
wrote
end.
that? I'm joking. Okay. When we say I'm a glass artist, that means I employ glass in my artwork. I do not blow glass. I try to, one thing, and I thought, who will spend the amount of time it takes to make this? When you can tell somebody, make this. And you just can say that to someone, but let me say, when you work as I do, where I'm working with glass artists, I never get exactly what I want, because I have to submit to the person who's making it. And they are giving me what they know how to give. So that broadens my sphere of working, because I have to learn how to submit, which you can see is not an easy thing for me to do. How did I start doing glass? Not only had I been working with beads forever, but there's a piece in this show that I think is my last really hyper-woven show piece, and it's because I'd been trying everything to stay in love with weaving, with textiles. And on that piece, it's crochet, bead work, weaving, all kinds of stitchery, coiling. I realized that, and once again, this is still me as a hippie, a flower child, kumbaya, that I was looking for translucency. And when you work with fibers, the light is absorbed or bounces off the surface, but light is transluced. Light can go into glass. You can have a background and a foreground. You can inform people by what's happening behind it because you can see through it. All of those things opened up for me. And then the fact that I could fuse my beadwork, no matter what the glass artist said, with the glass meant that I was like a nutty professor, taking my beadwork with me and using an entire other material that dealt with translucency, and that I could use as a sculptural matrix as well. And because there should be, for me, I'm only speaking about me now, guys. There should be, firstly, you should not be able to say no to me and expect me to accept that. And there shouldn't be something that I can't have. Why, if I want to work with glass, why shouldn't I try it? Why should that be closed to me because only glass workers can do it? Or that's not true.
Yeah.
How did they get there? Everybody's not, born in an art castle with eat art food and whatever. They're just like me. So why can't I be one of those folks? So when I realized that translucency was of import to me, then I kept going to places and insinuating myself into the atmosphere. And then as I got better at it, then I would be offered residency so I could go someplace and work with the glass artists. And, they generally would look at me like, okay, let's get this done. And then by the end, I had them in my palm. It's just right there where I had them.
Oh, I think this will be our
I'm not
last.
joking about that.
We know, Joyce. I think this will be our last question. It's a good one. You, your journey, and art. You, your journey, and art are the epitome of limitless, which is why you're such an inspiration, especially as a Black woman artist. With the narrative, at least today, that to be a quote-unquote successful artist requires that an artist stick to one style or one medium, to what extent was this something you considered throughout your journey? Which you kind of just talked about.
Well, the one thing I stick to is being good, quite honestly. And for me to be an artist who creates, I'd have to experiment in other things. When I used to teach, I'd say, okay, let's do this. And you're with people and you don't want to move. And so, but you don't understand, doing this, winning or losing, is going to bring you right back to over there. But you're smarter this time because you experienced something else. So for me, I want to be that person who just knows a lot and can employ it in their artwork, who will not be denied, and who has the ability to share that with others. Not only through my artwork, but as a teacher and as a mentor, and as someone who keeps saying to you that this is the one life we have. I always say that, you know, if there is reincarnation, I had some infractions in this lifetime, so I might come back as a bug, a horrible body fluid, something, you know. So this time I'm living it, and if this is the end, then I'm going to end it this way. I usually end my talks like this. My mom and dad said to me, you have a light, a very bright light. In the old days, they used to say, don't hide your light under a bushel. My mom said, no, no, no bushels for you. You have to make it shine. Now, my parents hid under bushels because of their ethnicity, their lack of academic education, and because somebody could have power over them. Not me. I say to you, if you cannot cop a hit from this glow, then step off. Because this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh, 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 I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine. Ooh. Let it shine. Let yours shine.
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. Thank you. Buy a pair of pants. So I guess this is where you throw them out?
There's the stop sign, yeah. Thank you, online audience, too, all those internet people.
Get out, it's raining, go get a drink somewhere. You know I make those cards because I like it.
Okay.
If I didn't like it, I'd be like this.
I do that.
Thank you. I will give that card to someone. You may hear from them soon. And congrats on your job, Miss Director, Miss Curator, Miss Head Person. Thank you.
It's her.
Yes, I see you too.